This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. Okay, so for agenda items, I was hoping we could continue the list that we've been working on before. Is there anybody else that wants to bring anything else, any other topics that they would like to discuss? Bill, it looked like you had added in some additional voting, it looks like.
Yeah, I just, I'll just give you a quick update on that. At one of our earlier discussions with the IC chairs, we talked about in a way to gather, you know, kind of start that discussion and approval process at the IC level. And one thought was, and one request was that I put together some way to, you know, kind of assess where we're at or where the IC members are at in terms of adoption. So we have an IC meeting tomorrow, and I want to share this concept. So I know that the matrix is far from complete, but I want to have the IC members start thinking about how they're going to, you know, make a final evaluation. And if there's concerns that they have, that we start addressing those concerns, you know, earlier rather than later.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So is there anything that you would like us to do before the meeting tomorrow, or you just want to be able to show what you've got here?
No, I think we just kind of continue. So, you know, my latest report to them was, and you probably heard it, as you know, that we're kind of working down the list and trying to, you know, get the wording right. And this particular project is, you know, partway down their list.
Okay. All right, in that case, let's start working our way down the list then. So we have some placeholders. First of all, is this large enough for everybody to read? Let me zoom in a little bit more. There, might make it a little bit easier.
It's even better, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some stuff here from, it's basically a placeholder for modularization security. So Bill, you just mentioned, and Rajiv just mentioned that you're gathering these requirements as well from a security standpoint.
Yeah, so Nate Klein volunteered to actually gather and start working with the security project and vetting out what they think are, you know, desirable features in the future. So there are some kind of similar approaches. So with ACS, you know, there's a cold plate requirements or immersion requirements document. The security project has a similar specification for attestation and root of trust, and so what is likely to happen is that there would be a line item in here that states, you know, that certain types of systems comply with their, you know, their requirements. They do have it broken down by various chapters, and so I think one of the things they have to flush out is, you know, do they want to, you know, make these requirements or your desired features align with a chapter. So for example, servers may align with, you know, chapter 7, and network gear align with chapter 8, something like that. So those are the types of things that they're working through.
So this morning, Yigal, who is part of the security group, did write a couple of security requirements, and he used the same same structure. And if you can give me privileges, I can quickly show my screen and then get back.
Rajiv, I don't know that we need to go into that detail with the security guys, but I think that the right message here is let's let them vet that out, and they have a large number of people that participate on that call. I mean, it's typically, you know, 25 to 35 people. So yeah, they're gonna Nate volunteered to kind of flesh it out, and then he'll reply back with you know, the kind of that flushed out version.
Okay, got it.
And Rajiv, I don't want to cut you off on or anything. I just that this is literally is what day 2 that they started working on it. So there's going to be a lot of commenting that's going to go on before we start to you know, converge.
You're right. In fact, we saw that in that call where there were so many questions. But yes, no worries.
So Bill, do I need to share access with them? With Nate? Or are you going to paste that in?
So what, just to make it easier, Nate has a copy of this and he has created another version that is their working copy. So we don't have to deal with all the iterations, and then he will provide that roll up and summary back to us.
Okay,
and
cool.
He already has access to this.
Okay, super.
And again, my thought at the time was, you know, let's don't open this up to 25 people, and before we know it, we overrode on top of something and, you know, lose it. So
yeah, actually, that's probably a pretty good way to engage some of these other groups, right? Is to, you know, give them a copy essentially and let them play around with it, and then we can copy and paste it back into the master.
yeah, I'm hoping that, you know, John Leong is kind of working on that and kind of follows that same path.
Yeah, have you talked to him? So that you've got this in here from April 23rd for John. I haven't heard anything since then. Do you want me to ping John, or just some way?
Yeah, if you can, yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's good. And I guess by the same token, we've also kicked off the modularization. So I know there's a group of us that are in that same group that Ja is leading. So we'll wait to essentially see the same thing come out of there. Okay, do we want to go through like the ACS requirements?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Do we want to say if it's so I added this, so it's accepted. I don't know if OCP accepted is just kind of assumed for all this.
Not for all, right? Or,
yeah, I think we need to be specific on which ones are OCP accepted. And if it doesn't say that, then it's just OCP inspired.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is almost redundant because any PowerShell submission must comply with it.
What if it's OCP inspired? Is that a requirement? Or in this case, it would be that
the only difference between inspired and accepted is whether or not their design files shared.
Okay, all right. So
there's no wiggle room in terms of compliance to the spec. So, you know, an inspired product must comply 100% to the spec.
Got it. All right. So the only reason we've added this up here, OCP accepted, is because this was related because it's for a design contribution.
Yeah. So in the reason we added 24 and 25 is that it says you have to submit the design files, including the, you know, bill of materials, Gerber, all that. It's just that it doesn't necessarily state where it goes, and so in fact 25 is redundant. 24 is fine because it basically says that there's going to be a repository to gather that data. So again, everything goes into the contribution portal. That's a redundant requirement.
Okay. So you just hear that part right there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So in terms of, for the cold plate requirements document, so Jessica, from a scope standpoint,
Yeah.
I mean, is that going to be, are there any exceptions that we need to note, or is it just pretty much any, I mean, whether it's a cold plate or valve or manifold, blah, 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 they all have to comply with this document.
Yeah, different parts of the document, right? If it's not a full liquid cooled solution, if it is a valve or something else, it still needs to meet like the pressure requirement or whatever else is in there, right?
Sure, sir. So can we just say that it has to come? I mean, if I just say the applicable requirements, it seems pretty soft.
It does, right? And we're targeting as well for any contributions within a cold plate solution versus immersion solutions as well to have a peer reviewed contribution, right? It needs to basically, there's a committee first with experts that are looking into if the requirements are met, right? And which requirements that need to be met. And then after that has been basically checked off, then it would come into the incubation committee.
Okay.
Right, so that's what we're targeting both for the cold plate and for the immersion requirements to make sure that we have mature solutions coming in, right? That they're, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And we did call it a document, right? After
I
all
will
that,
go. Yeah, I will. And I was wondering also, do you want to have links in here or do you want to have links somewhere else? Because when we start talking about documents, right, we have both a document as well as a checklist.
yes. I think when we start putting links, it might get more complicated, particularly if you do different revisions of this. The odds are that link's not going to work unless somebody goes back and is constantly updating it. And so I was trying to make it so it act as a pointer. So if I was to look at this requirements document and see ACS, I would know that I need to go talk to somebody in the leadership of ACS to figure out, what this is, right?
Okay.
Links would be very cool if we could figure out a way to automatically maintain them.
Mm-hmm. So any contribution shall comply with the cold plate requirements document, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we say any contributions, we are talking about contributions which are related to advanced cooling systems.
Yeah.
Liquid cooling. Yeah. Any liquid.
Yeah, because any contributions is very sweeping, right? So.
Yes. Yes. And here is also the liquid cool or the cold plate requirements is for the technology cooling solutions loop also. It doesn't include the facility at this point, right? It includes the IT equipment rack and CDU as well. So if we're saying any liquid cooling contributions, we need to make sure that we're not thinking data center facility at this time because I don't think that there are any requirements there today.
Okay, so that's kind of like my very first question. Should we purposely kind of exclude that from this, or since it doesn't necessarily, since there aren't any, that's more confusing to someone?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with this, right? Of saying,
Okay.
and that is something that needs to be harmonized between the different projects as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
From a data center facility perspective and all the advanced cooling solutions. Maybe we can actually have that as a driver as well, right?
You mean this requirement as the driver?
Yeah, as a driver of saying we need to have this in place, right? We also need to make sure that any contributions, any specifications need to adhere to a minimum set of requirements also at the facility side.
We're not ready to say that yet, though, right?
No.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying that, you know, of using it as a driver.
Got it.
To make sure that harmonization is being sped up, right? That's basically, yeah.
Got it. Right. If you want to include it, you got to go create it. If you want to be able to get that in here, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So now in terms of columns, I'm not sure we actually have a column for these yet.
No, I mean, it goes under the project, I guess, then, right? Because advanced cooling solution is sub-project, but it's under rack and power.
Yeah. So we'll just call that rack and power then. So let's just call this, is this a R? Yeah, this is an R, right? We're pretty confident this is an R.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of that, is to make that an R. So, okay.
And otherwise, our cooling solutions, just a question here, are cooling solutions also submitted under the server project?
There's some work that's being done with heat sinks and as well as a compatible loop internal to the OAI subproject.
Okay.
That are not necessarily complying with these as well. So that's a very good question. So this is a server supplier, right, that needs liquid cooling loops for the OAM, those modules that are very hot, and so they're developing a solution for that particular chassis. But right now we don't have the interfaces on the rack side, right, on our side, to define that, what the requirements are yet. So for me, I don't think they should be submitting like the solution for that. And so I think we should also kind of extend that. If everybody agrees, like, these should also be compliant as well.
If they're using a liquid cooled solution.
Exactly, right. So if they're doing like an entire system, which includes one of these loops, it should also be compliant. And for me, that's the point of all this, right? Is they can, if you're developing a server, you go down here and you realize, oh, I didn't realize I also have to comply with this because I'm developing a switch. John's not on the call. So Bill, do you have any concerns if we make these requirements also a requirement for servers, and particularly like the networking area?
At this point, I think we could set it as a requirement and see what kind of feedback we get. I mean, I think that the cold plate requirements, immersion requirements document is adequate to cover everything.
Yes,
I mean,
it's
Yeah,
very general.
it's
I mean,
very general.
I guess it explicitly states what is, what the scope is. So, so I think that that's sufficient. In other words, there's going to be devices that are not within the scope.
yes.
For sure, yes.
Is that a true statement, Jessica?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
There most definitely solutions that will not be in scope.
Yeah. So the idea is you got to comply with the document, but the document is going to say there are certain categories of product and certain types of applications that are out of scope. Therefore, by design, you wouldn't have to comply, but at least you've looked at that and said, is it in scope or out of scope?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm happy with this. I think this captures our intent very well. Okay, so we have a line on here from thermal requirements. I'm not sure exactly where that came from. I don't know if we have any, I don't know if we actually have any specifications that define those requirements as right this second. Do we? Does anybody know of any? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't know of any. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're not there, but I have not heard about any.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of specs for individual projects, but I don't think there's a OCP-wide requirements. So is this something that we need to create? Is that why this is in here? Again, I don't know exactly where this came from. I could have written it as far as I know, but I don't recall creating it. So I'm inclined to get rid of it unless there is.
I think that was just a placeholder.
Okay.
I think you can get rid of that. Yeah.
I think it's a good one.
Was it 20? I can't tell. 32, 22. That was also a placeholder.
30 for modularization.
32, yeah, 32. That was just a placeholder to say we need to get, JAWS input into this. That's all.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Otherwise, Steve, do we want anything of, in the same way as we have requirements around cold plate and immersion, do we want any around door heat exchanger?
I would think we would certainly want it to be like the materials. I would think we wanted to comply with that at a minimum.
Materials meaning wetted materials, or?
Yes, like the compatibility, I think would probably be very similar between a door and a cold plate, right? They would be almost identical.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too, of just from a pressure requirements, have they been set, and
well, so
what leakage detection do you have in place, and those type of things, right? But
yeah, I know they're working on a design, but I don't know if it's broad enough to be project wide as opposed to defining a specific product, right? I mean, your document here is, I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, right? Everything's going to comply. It's very, very general. I don't think that what they're working on is as a general a set of requirements as opposed to a more
No, I
specific one.
don't think they're doing that either, right? They're working on one particular design, as you were saying. So
Yeah.
I wonder if we want to have that though, around that. If any, you know, yes, we have one OCP design then eventually, right, for a door heat exchanger.
Right,
But
right.
do we want to have, if there are any other contributions, there's at least a minimum set of requirements that they need to adhere to.
Yes, yes.
And it could be a you know, a small modification really to requirements within the cold plate.
Yeah, you're saying that they could effectively probably copy and paste the bulk of
Parts of it, yes.
Yeah, the bulk of that and essentially reuse it and say we're going to be following the same thing.
Yeah, and then change it to whatever, you know, whatever. We have some estimates in there of these are, for example, typical operating ranges for pressures, right? For IT equipment and stuff, and they can do the same thing, right, for door heat exchanger. But I think a lot of it can be reused. But I would think that it would make sense to have something like that for a door heat exchanger as well, right?
Yes, I agree. Maybe that's something I can talk to Jacob about.
Is there currently a requirements document for door heat exchangers?
No, that's what we're just discussing. There's not one.
Okay, so
they're working on a product specific specification, but they don't have a general one. So what Jessica was proposing was you could probably use the bulk of the cold plate document for that use, right? You wouldn't have to start from scratch. You could probably just, you know, leverage most of that to make a general spec.
Yeah, and take out specifics about cold plates and IT equipment design potentially, right? And depending upon what you're after.
Right. So my concern would be that we don't want to hold up, you know, that unless there's a spec available, somebody can go download and read today. My concern would be that it may kind of delay this. So I would prefer to not. I would prefer to just treat it as, you know, this is we'll have to cut this in a year from now when they get a final document approved.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't put that. I wouldn't put that in this document yet. I totally agree with you. We need to go make the document first and then put it in here.
Yeah.
But for sure, it was more around the strategy of should we not encourage that of having a document for it.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah. Let me make an action item for myself to go do that. Talk to Jacob to see if he can do that. Okay. Is there another area that we want to cover?
So Steve, do we have like we have, you know, ACS, are there any thoughts around the power envelopes for large systems, and then proposing, you know, certain platforms be considered when people are looking at deploying systems with certain power envelopes? Let's say I want to build a rack with 15 kilowatt power consumption, then we recommend certain types of system or at least spec. So my question to everyone is, should we consider power just like how we have considered liquid cooling? Or is it being considered under the power shelves in line 27, 28, and 29?
It is not being covered by 27, 28, or 29. There's nothing in the specification right now that defines a lot of the features associated with the power, right? It's more about power conditioning. How do you get the proper power onto the bus bar and off the bus bar. It doesn't talk about the total amount of power that you might choose to put in there. It doesn't talk about the size of the rack, those types of things. So right now, we don't, as far as I know, we don't have any control at all, or even a recommendation to say the HPC project, right? That might encourage the development of a particular set of recommendations. But that doesn't necessarily, so, but I guess we probably need to take that next step. Like, so we've got maybe, we've got like maybe 3 of these going so far. How do we want to go and build out the rest of this chart? Should I be, do we want to invite, well, whatever, I guess the previous paradigm where you're pushing us out to the projects. We're going to talk about this with the other IC members, but how do we, I guess, get the other project leads engaged, go fill out some more of these for their particular projects, particularly like the networking? I know they've got quite a bit of requirements for their own internal use. Maybe I guess say after we meet tomorrow and we decide that we're going to go do this, maybe that's a good checkpoint for me to go out and start engaging with some of the other project leads to see where we can go from there. What do you guys think? Do you think that's a good plan? All right, well, I think it's a good plan, so I'm going to do that without any dissension. So unless somebody has like a recommendation, like DJ, do you have some other areas maybe where you think we can add some more lines to this with the group that we have here?
Yeah, power is the only thing I kind of can think of, but others might have more ideas. Or we can use this as a starting point and complete this task before we think of expanding even more. And that would be the second approach.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If Phil brings us up to the IC and we go through a little bit more detail, everybody agrees with the process, that'd be a good time for me to go engage with the other leads. So, okay.
Honestly, I think we have a good start. I think we need to get, some, input, finalized input from security, modularity, and John Leong, hardware management. But I think in terms of common platforms, the only other thing I would do is, if you kind of go back 3 months, we talked about what defines a common platform. And so, is there something that we have overlooked? If you go back and look at the goal and say, we want to have kind of generate commonality from generation to generation. We want to have, commonality around the support for types of applications. So if you have if we have an offering for, large memory, high compute demand, type of server, do we, from generation to generation, do we still offer that? And so we don't end up with a point product where, a customer decides to adopt OpenRack, and then, the next generation comes along and they don't have that, high memory, capacity server sled that they can go out and purchase. So you know, I mean, and I don't know the right answer to that, but I think maybe we go back and look at our notes and say, you know, is this sufficient, or did we, you know, kind of miss the intent there? Or is there anything that we should do to, you know, kind of close any gaps?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean, another exercise that we could do is go look at, you know, the last 2 or 3 contributions, maybe pick a server contribution, an edge contribution, you know, maybe a network contribution, and say, you know, if we use this checklist, how would it have changed the behavior of the contributor, or what's the results of that contribution? And do we end up with a better contribution that, or a contribution that aligns better to having a common platform?
Yeah, I think that would be a very good exercise to go do. Just like kind of do a paper exercise as well as ourselves, right? You know, if that was presented to us, would we have voted differently based on the information that's presented to us? And would that be a good thing or a bad thing, right? I think that would be valuable. So let me put that on the agenda for next time.
You know, and I think we could just go look at the last 3 or 4 contributions and say, okay, let's kind of peel the onion and see how this impacted that.
Yeah.
If nothing else, you know, so the reason I'm suggesting this is that the Data Center Facilities Group did this when they were doing their checklist. It was a very valuable exercise. I know that the HPC group was starting to do that on, you know, open rack based solutions. I'm trying to think if another group has done this, but anyway, it was a really, it was a great exercise, learned a lot from it. It influenced or changed the outcome of the DCF checklist.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, when we get to the IC and say, okay, now we, you know, are we ready to go forth and put this in place? We can truthfully say, hey, you know, we tested this against the last 4 or 5 contributions, and, you know, this is the outcome. Either those contributions would have gone through, or it may have resulted in, you know, X, Y, and Z changes.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely see the value in that. I think that's a very good suggestion, Bill. So in order to facilitate that, should do you want me to kind of, I can go through the contribution portal, right? I think by date, and pull some relevant submissions out and have those available for this group to look at next time. And maybe we can use next time to kind of do that exercise. You think we're ready to do that in another 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that would be good. Yeah, of going through, and then we can present it as well, right? Of saying, here's the examples that we have. This is how it came out, right?
Yeah.
Just for ourselves, and then for presenting the outcome, right?
Okay, so what I'll do is I will gather up those contributions, some exemplars, and I'll send those out to everybody just so you can like refresh yourself before we meet, and then we can meet and we can, you know, we'll have them available handy, and we can just kind of go through and score it. And if we're not sure, we'll have a specification here. We can go through it and check it real quick. So yeah, let me do that, and we'll put that on for next time. If everybody agrees that that's kind of a good process for next time, I think that worked very well.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Unless somebody else has another topic, I think we're in a good place for today. Anybody have anything else they want to talk about today?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't either. Thanks, Steve.
Yep, I don't have. Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks everybody. This is a very good meeting. So thanks for joining, and I will talk to you guys. I guess I'll meet you tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
All right.
Talk to you
Thanks,
tomorrow,
everyone.
Steve.
Very
Bye.
good. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.